Hello friends, we are back with a new review. We are here to review The Real Housewives of Potomac Season 8, which sounds crazy to say because I really literally remember exactly where I was when I watched the season premiere of Season 1 of Potomac. So that's wild. And that was in 2016, I believe. I'm really excited they're back, though. I definitely feel like this is one of those franchises that has really grown, especially like the cast. They've always had a really good cast, and like the dynamics have shifted quite a bit. So I'm excited to get into it. Obviously, we start the episode off on the heels of the ROBYN and JUAN thing, and ROBYN is at home doing her whole thing with the pictures or whatever. JUAN comes in. We all saw this clip online. I'm pretty sure everybody watched it. And, she immediately brings up the whole Canada thing and how there's so much noise around, the relationship. And JUAN is doing his whole, like, deflection type of thing. He's like, well, that was dumb and blah, blah, blah. And I like how GIZELLE characterized this later, so we're going to talk about that specifically. We're going into this conversation knowing that there were 3 instances, right? There's the Canada thing, well, the girl from Canada thing, the laundromat thing, and then the nail salon thing. JUAN is basically saying, he doesn't feel like ROBYN should have brought up the whole rumor about the girl from Canada on the podcast because they're acknowledging that basically is what created all of this noise that they weren't expecting. And JUAN's whole thing is like, he tries to relate it to giving money to the homeless. He's like, I give $20 and $50 to the homeless all the time. I'm just a nice guy. Like maybe I'm just too nice. Maybe I'm just too friendly. And part of that statement is definitely true. Like JUAN, you should stop being too nice and too friendly. But like getting a woman a hotel room has nothing to do with giving to the homeless. ROBYN did try to sneak in there, which I wanted to give her some brownie points for, but she's like, part of me is thinking like, well, if you are at a hotel room with a woman, like, why not try it? And that just felt like passive, like that was ROBYN's passive attempt at being like, hey, are you sure you didn't sleep with her or do a little something? And JUAN, grasps for some low-hanging fruit. He's like, well, did you see her? So they make jokes, I guess, about, maybe she wasn't attractive, and that's like an ongoing thing for ROBYN. Like she always makes a note to say, and JUAN too, whether or not the lady was attractive, because he says, his coworker was attractive that he was at the laundromat with. But, men will do just about anything in anybody. So the whole like attractive thing, like, LOL, be for real. Now ROBYN is basically surmising. Her whole point in this is that we went through it, we talked through it, and we chose to move forward. And she feels like the whole Canada thing is like the root of it all, I guess. And she's just letting it be known that she chose to believe him because she doesn't think that he will make up something that stupid. Like the story sounds crazy. She's like, why would it make up something like that? So, okay. And they talk a little bit about, how ROBYN is taken aback because Candace had such a big stance on this last season, but she felt like she was supportive to Candace with the Chris thing, which we'll obviously get into. And then lastly, they also highlight, which I didn't think they would get through all of this, but I appreciated it. They also talk about the fact that JUAN lost his job, which I forgot about. And we know that the underlying like legal situation was happening, but he is saying that he lost his job because they weren't winning enough games. I'm sure that 2 things can be true in that situation. We move on and we get a fun scene with Karen and Candace and Wendy, and this is a nice trio. Like I'm really excited to see this. I don't know how much of this we've seen, but I feel like it makes sense and it's going to work. And at the end of the day, they're pretty much sitting there discussing the whole ROBYN of it all. I did notice that most of the talk was coming from Karen and Wendy, and Candace was kind of sitting back. She was co-signing, and she talked a bit in her confessional, of course, but I'm wondering if at this point she was trying not to get too much into the tea of it all, because I feel like a lot with Candace is that when she gets vocal, she's like a wordsmith, so the girls really don't like, even though 13 other people have said what she said, if she speaks on it, it becomes a thing. So I was taking a note that she was a little bit more quiet in this meeting. But Karen is really the one that's on ROBYN's heels at the end of the day, and she calls ROBYN the biggest liar in the group. And, she highlights the fact that she feels like they were all targeted. The 3 of them were targeted, and their marriages and their situations were targeted last season just to hide and deflect from the ROBYN thing. And Wendy kind of like, mirrors that and says that ROBYN is, delusional, and basically, that they must just have some type of arrangement. Like ROBYN must be okay with what's happening. So that's a strong stance to have. Like for them to be saying that they feel like ROBYN is delusional, it it makes sense. And it's interesting to hear that this is like evenly believed amongst the cast, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Ashley's house is cute. She does, say now that she's a homeowner, but I'm wondering, just for my own receipts, is her name on the deed? Like, I know that Michael is on the mortgage with her, but I thought that they said that they were getting the house under Michael's LLC. So I'm just curious to know whose home is it actually. In terms of curiosity, I was also wondering why her kids were like climbing up all over the counters, but that was just a something I was curious about. That's all. She does acknowledge though, which I guess I'll give her some brownie points in terms of being transparent. And she does, like I said, Michael's on the mortgage still, and she's like, I don't know how that's gonna work when we get a divorce. The divorce is still pending, so I'm dragging my feet because I don't know what the financial situation will look like. And we obviously know she's not gonna get alimony, and but she says, I got the mortgage, I'm getting child support, so he didn't leave me high and dry. So okay, but I just wonder, that's understandable, but it's weird. It's a point of contention for me because I just feel like Ashley always has so much to say, but she's still kind of constantly being taken care of. That's my only thing. So, in this scene, Gizelle calls. The Gizelle and Ashley link-ups always puzzle me. But anywho, Gizelle calls and she's asking Ashley, is she divorced? And she's getting into that tea as she would. But then they start talking about planning a meeting for ROBYN. And interestingly enough, Gizelle feels like, she first says she doesn't want to call ROBYN delusional. But she's like, she has a different perspective as it pertains to her relationship with JUAN. And it's a different perspective from everybody. And so they need to have this meeting with her to kind of, encourage her to, I guess, be open to a different perspective. So I'm wondering how far that's going to go, because I started to think like, okay, is this just Gizelle doing her job? And maybe she had a talk with ROBYN like, hey, I'm going to be doing my job this season and holding you accountable, but it won't be that deep. So I'm thinking, is she going to go that deep with it? But I think we, saw where that went. The next part I didn't really care for, and I didn't know why we were doing it. Like, obviously it's the season premiere, and we want to do our catch-ups with the ladies and see what they've been up to. But I thought that it was just like an abomination that we were sitting in Gizelle's house making sushi with this young man named Jason for so long. Like, awesome sauce, very attractive young man, great. But even his caption said Gizelle's man friend. So, like, this isn't a substantive relationship. Like, we all have man friends here, men friends, or whatever the plural pronunciation of that is. We all have a little man friend from here to there, so like it doesn't mean that we need to film with them. So that just felt like, why are we doing this? She talks a little bit about her kids going off to college, but I'm gonna keep on moving on. We get to Mia. We got some cute information here. Like, obviously we already knew that the business breakdown thing happened last season, but I made it a point to take notes because I still just don't really understand what occurred. And from the Twitter, they're saying that the story has changed a bit, but here's the story that we got. Gordon was voted out of the family business, which is consistent with what she said before. But she says that she's no longer the marketing director as a result of that. But I guess I don't remember her being a marketing director. I don't know. And then she says, but he was the CEO, which I think was also consistent. Gordon's talking about the fact that he may have to go to litigation because they owe him $500,000. And, they acknowledge that Gordon had been going through some type of depression for about 2 months. And Gordon, then we get some type of tea from Gordon, because it seems like he's feeling some type of way, and he's just like, yeah, and also like, you thought I was doing something wrong, so we had to do an audit and all this other stuff. And Mia's like, well, I have to cover my bases, which I think is reasonable. If you're married to someone, you don't want like an indication that there was some like foul business player, they were like taking money. Like, we obviously see that a lot in the Housewives world, so I can understand her having that concern, but it felt like Gordon felt some type of way about it, which also makes sense. And then, Mia mentions briefly that she's going to stop drinking, but that story does a little bit of this for a little while. And then she comes back and she clarifies that she's stopping drinking, hard alcohol, but she's still going to drink wine. And, the last time that she drank, it was a bad situation with Karen, at last year's finale, where she was asking Karen, had she had a relation with this other man? So, she wants to call and check on Karen, whatever. So up until this point, like, I believe that there had been about 45 minutes of the episode or 40. And I was just like, Jesus Christ. Because I'm just like, we haven't even gotten through everybody. And like, again, I get that we need to check in with everybody, but these scenes are just a tainch bit too long. We get to Candace and Chris after the commercial break, and they've gone on a picnic. And they cover the bases quite quickly. Chris and Candace talk about, their marriage issues last season with the rumors. And then they catch up and talk about Candace's tour and the cost and, wanting to spend more time with each other. And we get up off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like that, I feel like that is the perfect amount of time to be given to that. And even in it, we talk about what happened, talk about where we are now, and then we want to talk dynamic. Like, how do you tie in with this group this season, Candace? And she talks a little bit about the fact that, her and Robyn had a really rough season. And, she does acknowledge, as Robyn said, that Robyn was there for her with the Chris stuff last season, but also that Robyn was moving weird, which she was with the whole speaker thing, and she was very weird to Candace at the reunion. So, she talks about that, and she's like, but she's willing to move forward. And Chris kind of feels like he's egging that on, like, you guys could be better, you can have a conversation. So they're going to do that, and we move on, and that's how it should have been for everybody. Jesus. So we finally get to the event, which I thought was going to be a full cast. Like, typically in a first episode, I like to see a full cast, but I feel like we saw pockets of the cast filming together that made enough sense for me to take this and run with it. And I also feel like this was an excellent scene, so kudos to them. They're at Gizelle's house. Is going to be Gizelle, Charisse, Ashley, and Robyn. And, Charisse shows up first, and Gizelle is saying, well, I hope Ashley gets here so we can, cadoodle and kasnoodle about Robyn and what's going to be the tea. So, understandable. So Ashley pulls up. They're acknowledging that they're going to be giving Robyn some tough love. So I'm like, okay, this is going a little bit further than I had expected it to. So I'm leaning in a little bit more, Gizelle is explaining that this group came together of them four because they've all been through similar situations of what Robyn is going through right now. Relative, like they've all dealt with men that cheated. So fine. But, fine. What really got me, though, is when Gizelle is now discussing it with Charisse and Ashley, and she's saying what her big qualm is with it. Like, she deliberately says this time that Robyn is delusional. And she brings up specifically, like, the nail thing, because, again, it went in stages, right? So it's like we got the Canada lady, boom. We got the laundromat, boom, and then the nail salon. So Gizelle's basically saying by the time the nail salon thing happened, she was like, girl, what's the tea? And she's saying that she went and had a conversation with Robyn, and basically Robyn said that she didn't care, and she said, I think that she said she's numb to it. Now listen, we know how Gizelle mischaracterizes and half-ass tells stories, so this could be completely false. But it's different because that's supposed to be her friend. So if you don't even remember the story, you're going to paraphrase like you always do. But it's also going to be paraphrased on the more negative side of things, like it always is. It's weird to do that to a friend and say like, well, she basically said she didn't care and Robyn was numb to it, because that's kind of putting the fire underneath everybody's assumption that Robyn is just in a sunken place, which I still believe. But I just don't feel like as a friend that's something that you should contribute to. So I'm just wondering, for the sake of the show, excellent, I love that. But, I'm wondering how Robyn's going to respond to that. And they even have a little bit of a cackle as Robyn's coming in. They're basically saying like, well, it seems like she's just used to it. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's just another day for her, and this is just kind of her thing that she's going through. So I'm like, okay, well, at this point, now the basically other side of the group, who is the Wendy and the Karen and the Candace, they have said it, which would present an issue because they're not friends they're not friends with Robyn, so that would come off as shade. But now Robyn's friends are also saying it. So I'm like, I'm wondering because if history is going to repeat itself, Robyn's going to take out her anger on the other side of the group for saying something that her friends even said. I'm just Miss Cleoing and like rubbing my crystal ball and wondering when/if we're going to see that occur. Robyn comes in, and it's clear. I also want to know how she's going to respond to this. It's clear that this was like a level of an ambush because, Gizelle lets her know, like, you're the woman of the hour. And she's like, well, I didn't know that. Like, you just invited me over. And they're ready to get on her case. So I think that's interesting that, Robyn wasn't given a heads up by her friend that she was the scene today. So I'm wondering, how she feels about that. She gives the ladies an opportunity to speak first, and Ashley starts. She basically explains, you know, same thing. It was going in levels, like this happened, okay, then this happened, and then this happened. And she's like, when I'm calling you and checking up on you, I don't know if you're being honest with me, and I don't even know if you're being honest with yourself. And Robyn is still on this whole thing of, you know, Juan's not dumb. And even if Juan was doing stuff like this, essentially he wouldn't be out doing it in public. And it's just like, I'm starting to gather that Juan has gaslit the hell out of Robyn, because men do dumb shit all the time. People do dumb shit all the time. But we're talking specifically about this man that she's married to. Men do dumb stuff all the time. And I like that Ashley put it into a little bit more perspective. Like, this made perfect sense, and I mean, it's obvious, but I hadn't really thought about to say it. And she's like, at the end of the day, like, you think about all these things that you're isolating and saying, well, you know, this happened, fine, whatever, da 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 da. But she's like, consider the optics of it, right? Like, we just had this Canada thing, and now you're being seen with a woman at a laundromat, and then now you're being seen at a woman at a nail salon. You claim that it's not an issue, but the optics of it is going to look weird. I thought that was a great point. And Robyn kind of acknowledges that she felt the same way, and she kind of is saying that she had a conversation with Juan about that, and was saying, like, you know, well, maybe you shouldn't do that as it pertains to, like, the nail and the laundromat thing. But he was kind of just like, I don't care. So at that point, Robyn's kind of just like, well, what do you want me to do? And that to me sounds like, you know, well, I raised my hand, and I was saying that that's something that I don't like, and I got pushback. So, like, what do you want me to do now? And it's like, I understand, Robyn, that you feel like you put your foot down, but sometimes you need to put your foot up his ass to get him to understand. Like, she kept saying, what do you want me to do? I want you to pick that foot up that you previously put down and put it up Juan's ass. Maybe put both of your feet up there. She specifically said that she told Juan that the block is hot. So that says to me, like, okay, Robyn is partially awake. You know, she's sleepwalking. So she at least she's moving. Like, there's movement there, like, but nothing's happening, right? Like, maybe she's sleepwalking and she walked into that wall, and that wall's name is Juan. And it seems like she's just stuck on that wall. And she gets to a thing that also makes me feel like this is the level of being gaslit. And she's just like, well, I'm not going to tell him, you know, who he can be friends with and what he can go do when those things previously, you know, used to be okay. And I can understand feeling like that, because it's just like, this is also their second marriage. And you have to realize that, like, the first one broke down as a result of infidelity. So now I feel like Robyn has always felt like, after the fact, she's been on eggshells talking to Juan about that stuff, because we've seen in the last 7 seasons that when she even brings up stuff like that, he gets very, like, even in this season, the premiere, this episode, he's like, that's dumb, like, whatever, it's not a big deal. And he really gaslights her into thinking, like, these are very stupid topics, and I don't know why you're talking to me about this, Robyn. And so Robyn feels like she can't come to him and address things at the end of the day. I did like Charisse's position in this. I feel like was perfect. Like, I like that she was able to come in, and I like that each of the ladies did it right. Like, Ashley had her moment to talk, and then it felt genuine, and it felt like it made sense. And these are the exchanges that we want to see. And Charisse comes in, and she's just like, you know, I've seen this before. Like, I've been in this predicament before. So she's also like, I mean, the key question is, like, Robyn, are you good? Like, Robyn has all these defenses, and he's just like, I don't care, it is what it is. But the real question is, like, yeah, Robyn, are you good? And we got a really good answer from that question that's prompted by Charisse. Charisse, 10s across the board. Good for you. And Robyn's like, you know, I feel like my joy has been stolen. You know, I feel like all this stuff is piling on me, and now I don't have any joy left inside of me. And Gizelle's like, okay, like, Gizelle's doing an excellent job. She's like, but, like, connect some pieces, baby. Like, we're getting there, but it's also like, are you realizing that Juan is at the center of that? Like, hello. Robyn's back at the, like, well, what do you want me to do point, right? Like, it felt like she was asking her friend, like, girl, are you telling me to leave my man? And she's also like, which I thought was crazy. She's like, the world is trying to tear us apart. And it's like, nobody's trying to tear y'all apart. Like, girl, at the end of the day, we're rooting for you. Like, we want you to stand up at the end of the day and stop acting like there isn't tea here. And that feels a bit pushy even saying it, but it's just like, now you're gaslighting us to make it seem like, oh, we hate Juan, and we want you guys to get another divorce. Oh my God, it's like, no, girl, like, we want you to stop acting like the sky is like right now the sky is orange, and you're trying to tell us that that's normal. That like we were confused. And she goes back again and she's saying, my joy has been taken, but that's not because of Juan. And Gizelle's like, but yes, it is. Like, world, speaking through Gizelle, like, it absolutely is. Like, none of these situations would be happening but for Juan. And at this point, this felt genuine. Like, this felt genuinely like a friend trying to get her friend to wake the hell up. And Robyn was even getting frustrated. And she's like, bring it on, like, whatever, I don't care. So at this point, I could tell, like, I'm like, okay, Robyn's in a sunken place. Because she's saying it. She's like, it's all piling on me. She's like, the world is piling on her. She feels like her friends are piling on her right now. And she's just like, it is what it is. Like, I'll just take it, like, whatever. And I hate that that's the position she feels like she has to be in. Like, she can't stand up and have a position against that because she's always so loud and wrong as it pertains to things that happen in the group. So you can at least raise your volume a little bit as it pertains to your marriage, as it pertains to your personal life. Like, be more assertive there. That's just so confusing to me. Like, even Gizelle says, like, girl, you don't have to keep acting like you don't care. And I'm just like, thank you. And then I like, Charisse basically says something similar to what Ashley says, like optics. Like, girl, take the world out of it because, like, Robyn keeps trying to make it about the world and what the world is saying. Charisse, like, girl, take the world out of it. Like, even aside from that, like, he shouldn't be out in public with women at the end of the day. Like, it's inappropriate. And she's like, I dealt with that same thing in my marriage. Like, I was making excuses for years. And it was nice to even, like, that's something tangible in Charisse's life, but we also got to see that on the show in the past. So it's nice to see her play this role of like coming back, yes, in a friend capacity, but we also have experiences to draw on from that. She's giving her good, tangible advice. Like, girl, don't make excuses for this man. And she's like, I made excuses for Eddie for years. And then at the end of the day, I did all that work to hold all that stuff in. And he left me. Like, girl. I like that it was pointed enough for them to say, like, you're making excuses for him. Like, not asking, like, asserting it. Like, girl, you're saying all this, but you're making excuses. And Robyn's picking up on it. And she's like, okay, well, are you saying I'm in denial? And and I like that Charisse was honest. She's like, well, girl, like, specifically as it pertains to, like, the Canada girl thing, like, I would say I saw some denial there. Like, especially because he kept talking to that woman afterwards. Like, Gizelle chimes that in. She's like, he was still talking to her after the situation happened. And Robyn's like, well, yeah, like, I held him accountable for that, and I told him to get out, and then we moved on. And Gizelle's like, baby, back it up, because first of all, like, okay, I like that Charisse, like, it literally was going back and forth. Charisse, like, okay, so that's what you're holding him accountable for, like, still talking to the lady. And she's like, well, yeah, and then I told him to get out. And Gizelle's like, but did he get out? And Robyn's like, no. And she's he and ha. Like, girl, what is funny? What's funny? Gizelle's like, I just feel like there's not going to be anything that he can do for you to actually tell him to get out. Like, next time if it happens, are you going to tell him to get out? And Robyn, unconvincingly as hell, is just like, yeah, girl, no. And even in the middle of that, I like that Ashley's like, girl, I made excuses for what's his name? Michael. And we get tangible examples from the show of that. And it gives us a different perspective because in those moments, we were seeing Ashley doing that same stuff. Like when she's like, yeah, he went to the hotel with that girl and he just fell asleep. It was like, everybody was like, Ashley, please, like, be for real. And I like that she's acknowledging now in hindsight. She's like, I was making excuses and it seems like you're doing the same thing. She's like, this feels like a Protect Juan campaign. Like, it's just not real. And Gizelle, as a friend that's seen Robyn through all of this, at the end of the day, she's like, even at your first divorce, like, you were a totally different person than you are now. And I just want you to stand up and be that girl and put yourself first. She relates it back to her situation with Jamal. She's like, I am always going to put myself first now as it pertains to relationships because I wasn't doing it then. I lost myself. And you don't need to do the same thing now. It really feels like Robyn is taking all of this information in, but I just feel like the deed is done. Like, Gizelle sums it up very well. And she's like, Juan makes up these very crazy, weird sounding stories just so that when Robyn is hearing it, she's like, oh, well, that's crazy. Like, that couldn't have been the case. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're right, Juan. Like, that is such a crazy situation. So I feel like Gizelle is highlighting that Juan can be an agent of chaos for Robyn, and I feel like that chaos just tends to like blind Robyn, and then she starts to feel gaslit because she's like, well, we've been through this before, and now I feel like she doesn't want to address those things again. This is their second run at it, and I don't feel like they ever got any closure on the infidelity conversation, when I feel like that's a conversation that Robyn has been trying to push for years. For the 7 seasons before this, there have been so many opportunities where she's trying to push, like, why you weren't around, why you were doing this, why you were doing that. This will lead to the breakdown. And each of those conversations were always cut short by Juan. So it's just so confusing to have seen them get to a point of, well, let's get remarried. And then imagine the shock of getting remarried, and the process of getting remarried, there's more BS coming out. So it's just like, at what point? But that's why I say the deed's done. Like, you know, Gizelle's like, girl, you seem like you're being defensive. And Robyn's like, I'm not being defensive. I'm just not saying what y'all want to hear. And I feel like there's some truth in that. Like, if you listen to it, like, she is defending Juan to a certain extent, but also I feel like she's being honest and saying, but I'm choosing to move forward. Like, at the end of the day, like, she asked for the 7th time, what do y'all want me to do? And Gizelle's like, girl, no, what do you want to do? And Robyn's like, I want to be happy and be at peace, and I want to move forward. So I think we need to listen to what she's saying. Like, she wants to be done with it. Like, it happened, and it's potentially happening, and she's not trying to deal with it. Like, it's whatever. Like she said, it's whatever. She does not care. Like she said, listen to what the lady is saying. So, and we don't want to hear that. And so at some point, we're going to have to stop being pushers. We, meaning her friends, Gizelle and them. We're all her friends. We're going to have to stop pushing our girl to stand up and let her be where she is and figure it out. And like Gizelle said in her confessional, you know, Robyn's life is being lived according to Juan, but at some point it's all going to blow up. And it is, because that's just how things are. Like, that's not, you know, being negative or wanting it to happen, but some people have to learn by trial and error, and that's what's going to happen, or have to happen, for Robyn and Juan. And I am going to wish them the best on that journey. That honestly was the best part of the episode. I thought it was amazing. I wish that, like I said, the individual parts of the episode had been cut a little bit shorter, like they did Candace's and Chris. But I like the way that the episode went. It was structured weird because it was kind of all over the place. But I liked it. And I thought it was a good episode. And I'm excited to see what happens in, you know, this season. So, and kudos to Gizelle. You know, not the whole Jason thing, that's a crock of BS, but like holding Robyn accountable, and at least, you know, I think it's interesting, like I said, that everybody in the group, including Gizelle, shares the opinion that Robyn is being delusional, and they're being vocal about it. So you know, we're being transparent, and if we're going to be honest, then I'm excited to see what we're doing next. See y'all in the next one.